welcome again to a wonderful Cosmic Cuppa with Jude. And tonight I'd like to welcome back a beautiful soul, very sweet lady that I'm very proud to call a very good friend, Forti. How are you, Kathy?
Oh, I'm great. Aloha, everyone from the island of Maui, a small little island in the Pacific here, and where it is just turning into summer. So I see some of you all have coats on already. I'm like, whoa.
Yes, we're getting into the cooler climes.
Yes,
we really are. So I'd like to read out your bio for the second time because we have had you on before. So I'll do that now. So Dr. Forti, Ph.D, is the author of the newly released, I'm not going to say Trilogy Book Series because she's put out a fourth one now. The book series Stacks, Library of Truth, Stacks, Awakening Truth, Stacks, Truth Will Set You Free, and now Stacks, Next Generation Truth, which look really interesting, and I'm going to ask her about these before too long. Prior to penning her novels, she was a clinical psychologist with over 30 years' experience in the mental health field. Her knowledge of psychopathology adds unusual character and depth to her stories. As a direct result of her own near-death experience in 2003, where her heart stopped, Kathy became more creative. I'm glad your heart started up again on that lot, Kathy.
Me too.
This led to the development of the Trinfinity8 and Ascension11 energetic software technology, now used by holistic practitioners worldwide. With a degree in broadcast journalism, she worked for several years as a researcher and field producer for CBS-TV New York. She also wrote a TV pilot script for Stacks that won a Slamdance Teleplay Award. She has authored a non-fiction book as well, Fractals of God, a psychologist's near-death experience and journeys into the mystical, and a children's book series, Freddie Brenner's Mystical Adventures. Kathy addresses subjects related to health, consciousness, spirituality, and the weird and wonderful. For years, she was leading ancient mystery school groups to Egypt, having explored the water tunnels underneath the Great Pyramid, as well as closed-off tunnels under the Sphinx. Sometimes referred to as a female Indiana Jones, after finding alien artifacts in Mexico, which I would love also to chat about, she is at heart an ancient explorer of the origins of humanity. That's something dear to my heart too. The further back we go in history, the nearer the truth we get, it seems. Born in Chicago, Kathy has called many cities her home, including New York City, Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Kansas, and Prescott, Arizona. She currently resides in Maui, Hawaii. So welcome once again, Kathy.
I sound like a gypsy. Moving around so much, and some of those things I actually kind of forgot about. It's that was a long bio, geez. Yeah, I always seem to attract, as I said, the weird and wonderful. I'm a kind of a magnet for it. So all the experiences I've had in life, I've been able to use in one way or another, maybe in some of the books that I've written, either the book that was about my near-death experience or have weaved it into this particular series. But yeah, since the last time we talked in November, and I don't even remember all that we talked about then, the November, that was like, it seems like years ago. I have written one book since then in the series, and this series was only intended to be 3 books. But then I went 20 years into the future in AI and looked at what the characters, how they were dealing with that. And so that was really interesting because it was a challenge. It's because I'm intuitive, but I'm certainly no psychic to read the future. But some things were coming down, and I saw things about the whole thing that I hadn't really gotten a perspective on before. So there's a little psychic girl in the first 3 books, and she grows up, and 20 years later you see what happened to her, and she meets a very unusual character from Arcturus, and it's all in the books, and they're dealing with the whole AI issue, and so it was fun. It was fun, challenging but fun. So we'll see what happens. I'm supposed to go in August to LA to pitch it for a television series. So, it's a crapshoot. You'll see what happens, but it would be nice to, because it's a story that lends itself very well to the visual film world and so forth like that. So yeah, what happens in the future? Well, one thing I did discover, or my guide showed me, was that humans, or on this particular dimension, are not compatible with AI. I mean, if you start entering parts, like I just heard this morning that Elon Musk just got the go-ahead to implant his Neuralink in a human. And they said because they had some problems with the first one, but they didn't go into what those problems were. Obviously, is he still alive? And the whole idea was that we think, people think, oh, that's great. We won't have to do all this work, and we'll have robotic humans and everything else. Well, this planet, or at least I was told, this planet, the dimension on this planet was built for angelic souls, and that if you start mixing AI technology with angelic souls, it nullifies the whole ability for free choice. Somebody else is pulling the strings, and if that happens, human angelic souls will discontinue incarnating on this particular realm. And sooner or later, after a while, this third dimensional realm will die out. So it was specifically so that we could, and AI just does not go with free choice. So it got a bit complicated, but it was interesting to look at, not just the fact that we start implanting things in our bodies or our head to make us sort of superhuman or super race and so forth like that. It doesn't jive on a higher spiritual level. So and what I saw was that the ancient Atlanteans who incarnated into the early Egyptian culture, they had the same problem. They were doing a lot of work with artificial intelligence, robotics, and so forth like that. They were so much more advanced, and a lot of that has all been lost over time. And as the ancient Atlanteans, they taught some things to the Egyptians, but they didn't teach it all, because they knew where we would be going down the pike with this, and they didn't want to create the same thing. And they showed me, I remember when I lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia, many years ago, that was home to the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce. And Cayce had talked about, that there was 3 particular individuals that had put a lot of the knowledge, they'd gathered the knowledge and put it in different outposts. He didn't call it outposts, but they were in different parts of the world to preserve the history of the human race and the knowledge. And it would be opened when man was ready for it and at the right time. and he said something that I remember always kind of stood in my mind, was the fact is that they won't be able to open it because they left a guard on duty. And you're thinking, well, what kind of guard could that be? Nobody's going to live that long.
I think we might know, Kathy.
And immediately, as I'm writing this, I saw the figure of Anubis,
yep.
the jackal god, and that he was actually AI. And so he is there, to stun. He was the god of the underworld, and also the god, the protector of the Giza Plateau. And so I was curious to see if anyone had ever thought of Anubis as being some type of AI robotic character. And I get online and find out that all these video games see him as that. So it was already in the collective consciousness.
Wow. That's amazing.
That they knew that this was some type of AI,
and I think it also depends on someone's frequency, Kathy, as to whether they can enter in certain areas to open up certain knowledge and the right frequency to be in these places.
Well, Casey had said that they would use some type of tones to open it, that they would know when they got in there, they would see their names in this lifetime, what they were. So they saw in the future, obviously back then, who these individuals would be. I'm sure I wasn't one of them, but I do know I was one of the gatherers of that wisdom and information back then. So there were many people, who came together to write the books of man's history. And I believe, some of that has been hidden in like the Vatican Library and other places, and but most of it's either been covered up, hidden, lost. Our civilization on planet Earth goes back millions, possibly even billions of years. And so we've lost so many. We know we have had at least 9 pole reversals. So land has gone down and new land has risen up, and, civilizations have been wiped out. I mean, living on Maui, I think I've said this to a number of people, that if I'm out on a boat and the waves get big, I get really, really nervous. There's not too many things I get super scared of, but most people go, oh, this is quite a ride. But I remember being on the beach or at least some type of shorefront and seeing this huge, like tsunami type wave of water coming towards during Atlantean times. And I knew I was going to die at that moment. So it's still stuck in my consciousness, big waves, die. So,
makes perfect sense. It holds in the cellular memory, Kathy, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And, so it's, so I try to weave all this stuff. I mean, I'm so excited about these books. It's like when you read all that stuff, okay, I invented technology and I did all this other stuff, but that seems like a long time ago. And I think you have to keep reinventing yourself to because curiosity keeps you young, intense curiosity, and any type of stimulation. And, all my books are researched either, on one level or not, or sometimes I just, hear my guides telling me and I go, oh, really? You can do that. And they put it in. That's true, and so I do. So everybody thinks that they're fictional books, but they're really, I mean, kind of, nonfiction sci-fi.
It's really beautiful. And I totally agree with you that we are angelic human. We are sovereign royalty in our own DNA and gene expression. And to mix with AI is definitely a no-no. It's connecting to a hive mind. It's making us transhuman.
Exactly. It's the hive mind
thing. Possibly be some help with medical situations, but where would that lead eventually with implants? I think it's a very bad road. and not one anyone should take at all, in my opinion.
Well, the interesting thing is my characters, for those of you who don't know, just briefly, the book one, Stack's Library Truth, they all follow succession. He, a library employee, stumbles upon an interdimensional portal to a library truth where all the effects are kept on everyone and everything since the beginning of time, and how it's been manipulated, and how there's all these other libraries around the world that are all interconnected, and how they're being used to suppress knowledge and so forth. So anyway, as I was writing the fourth book, I come back to Maui. There's in one of the books there's in Maui, but I come back to Maui and I'm writing about what is atop Haleakala, which is a portal, really is a portal in real life. And I'm seeing that everything has been much more developed up there. There's a few telescopes up there now that are run by the state of Hawaii, but also the Department of Defense and the 15th Space Surveillance Squadron. You know, the Space Surveillance Squadron that was started during Trump's administration. And, you know, it's all up there because there's so much UFO activity in Hawaii. The Big Island has Mauna Kea, that's telescopes up there. And if you run some of the footage slowly, you can actually see it. They tried to hide certain excerpts, but you can actually see it. We've caught it on tape. And so all of the islands here, Kauai has an underground base as well. And Maui definitely has. But what I saw in the future was, oh my God, more telescopes. And this was, you know, like this came out in the beginning of 2000, this year, 2024. And just this week, I was at a community meeting where the 15th Space Surveillance Squadron, you know, they want to run an environmental impact study. And this is the first I heard of it was this week, to put 7 more additional telescopes on top of the island, up on the top there.
And why would that be?
Well, you know, they put together this rinky-dink little PowerPoint presentation, but never said what the need was for 7 more telescopes. They already have observatories up there that can see everything in space. They also have some weaponry up there, which they deny, but it's right on their website that they use Thor, which is a directed energy laser weaponry, which people suspect they used in the Lahaina fires or was part of it, not the full cause of it or anything, because they had their own agenda, which we can get into later if you want. And so I said, oh my God, these are the telescopes and the extra satellites and things that I saw while I was writing this book. And the interesting thing was that the old Hawaiians, some of the Kanaka tribes, came out in force and just reamed the military, saying, this is sacred land. You're desiccating, man. You're like an old perverted man, you know, raping the children over and over and over again. And, you know, every environmental impact study has shown it's not viable to put anything up there because it's the national park, the only national park in the United States that has more endangered species of flora and fauna. And so, I mean, they went into, was the most passion-filled thing I'd ever heard. And I mean, they came and they said, you try and do this and you will have us warriors to deal with.
So Kathy, I was going to ask you about Hawaii because everything that you went through, and you were in Lahaina on that day, incredibly, and got out safely, thank goodness.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm wondering if you could please give us some updates after the August 3rd fires last year, your involvement with the community investigation group, and
yes.
Are the Hawaiians starting to regain back their sovereignty, and how are the people doing? So just if you could generalize or more on what's been going on there, because we all care very deeply for our beautiful Hawaiian friends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. I got kind of roped into it, you might say, the Maui Community Investigation Group. And you know, I only tended to support them, but before they knew it, they had me editing documents and FOIA requests and doing, you know, podcasts for them. And I'm still wondering, like, how did I get roped into this, And I think, there's a reason why you're led to be in a certain place. And I mean, this is really kind of like a heart center here in Maui. And it's a really sacred place. And for people who don't know much about Hawaii, back in, I forget what year it was, but I think it was the early 1800s or something like that. The queen of the island, she abdicated her rule, but she never abdicated and gave over the land because it wasn't hers to give over. It belonged to all of the native Hawaiians. But, our military came in and said, we're occupying it under military necessity, and became occupiers, and then somehow finagled it so that they could take over the land totally and make it a state. So the native Hawaiians here, make no doubt about it, you stole our land. And they did, and they, it's sort of like the United States gets away with a lot of shit, excuse me. They're the great conquerors, or they take over people's, or they get involved in businesses or governments where they shouldn't. And this is a perfect example of it, So once again, this is Haleakala. This is the mountaintop there. It's about was it about 13, not 13, about 10,000, a little over 10,000 feet high, the summit. It is considered the most sacred land of the goddess Pele. And I had a friend of mine who used to be a park ranger up there. And she for many years, and she said she's done every trail you can imagine up there in the summit. But she said the goddess Pele, actually, there was a new what do you call it, park ranger up there, and she goes, I was walking this particular trail and I see this woman all dressed in white with this white dog, and it was weird. What was she doing up there? And the other park rangers go, oh no, because the goddess Pele always makes her appearance before there is a big eruption.
Wow.
And the next day there was a big eruption on the big island.
Wow.
And so it is considered very, very, very sacred land up there. And to make it a military defense thing where they've got lasers and so forth like that, and they deny it even though it's right on their website. So anyway, so what is happening in Lahaina? Well, that day I was there. I was led to be there. I mean, I saw the cyclones in the water, the winds. But I left before I just knew something. I needed to get out of there, even though I was feeling all this rolling energy in my head, which I wasn't quite sure where that was coming from. But that Hurricane Dora was like 600 and some miles off the coast of it. It didn't even touch us. There was no rain, which hurricanes tend to have. And when the fires started, the wind was making right angles against the wind, the fire. I mean, everything defied logic about that fire. I mean, it was, there's no doubt about it. It was the strangest anomaly fire, and well orchestrated to grab that land. And here we are 9 months later, still no building permits issued. There are people who have been in FEMA housing this time being paid for. Their money runs out beginning June 1st, and no money to that. And so even the Hawaiians were saying, how dare you propose 7 more telescopes when we've got people who are homeless from the fires and you only gave them 700 per person?
Well, that is sacrilege. What are they going to do, Kathy?
That's a good question. A lot of money was raised, but like, where did all that money go? Well, you guys can probably read the writing on the wall on that one.
So, Kathy, going into the future, as you saw it or see it, how does Hawaii look in the future?
It looked very different. First of all, it was filled with casinos.
Whoa.
You didn't see any of the Hawaiian lands. It looked like it was being turned into some type of elite rich playground. And with signs that showed, pure water can be gotten here or something. So there always has been a water issue in Maui. And, it's like who controls the water? Some of it's controlled by, the county of Maui, the water thing, and some is owned by a private person, and some is owned by, the actual Hawaiians. So, they're always squabbling over water. And so it was interesting that there is a water issue in the future, but a drinking water issue. Now, there usually isn't a drinking water issue now here. We tend to manage that. But a lot of the old cultural areas were totally gone. And there was a lot of yachts. It felt like it was, Monte Carlo.
Wow. So
and lots of banks. So I think that, basically it becomes a banking center for the elite here. So, which is probably why Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Oprah Winfrey, Mark Zuckerberg, all those, Larry Ellison of Oracle Software, all those guys have bought huge, extensive tracts of land here, and some of them they shouldn't have even gotten, shouldn't have had access to, because some of those were still considered somewhat cultural lands. So,
oh my goodness. Yeah. What do you see happening with you were talking about the royal family there. Do you see them gaining their sovereignty at some stage? How's that going to work?
I could have just tapped into a possible future. Time is always being rewritten. I mean, I probably tapped into what was had the most energy attached to it, which, when that happens, is the most likely to occur. And but I did see that Washington, D.C. looked totally different as well. So that's why you see the Capitol on that last book there, the fourth book there. And it was surrounded like a fortress, and it wasn't habitable anymore. It looked like it had gone through some type of, I don't want to say nuclear thing. No, it wasn't nuclear, but they kept it there almost as if it was a symbol to some type of civil war. That's probably the best way that had happened. And some of the big buildings, like the Supreme Court building, was now an AI factory, and the Department of Artificial Intelligence. And there was, they were using holograms to make, to fool the people, almost as if I call filler people. So it looked like there was filler people there and other things going on, and it was all an illusion. So, and this is only 20 years in the future, wow. Maybe some of it I made up, I don't know. But it was a different Washington, D.C. It definitely was. And and the power had, the states had broken up, and there was states' rights. And the federal powers were more minuscule, but some states still aligned with it. But most states went and did their own thing, saying like, and you can see the writing on the wall now with the states. It's sort of like it's like people saying, that federal law is against the Constitution. I'm not going to follow that. So you can see the writing on the wall that somewhere down the line the people must rebel and decide we're going to band together in certain areas and make our own laws and follow our own Constitution, like the one you threw out, and go from there. So there's a political landscape change, but there's good news at the end of the book. I like happy endings. So I don't leave you totally in some dystopian world. But so there is a solution. And I kind of wanted to tell those people at the telescope meeting, oh, why bother putting it up? In 20 years they're going to be destroyed anyway.
We're certainly moving into very interesting times, and there's such a dichotomy of different opinions and everything that's going on politically, militarily, educationally, financially, medically. I mean, it's all up in the air at the
Yes,
moment, isn't it?
what isn't changing? That's it,
Yes.
And if you have
Yes.
a hard time dealing with change, you're going to have a hard time navigating this,
Yes.
So, and I see my friends, they're all dealing with, stuff that maybe that, old baggage that maybe they, haven't sat with and worked through and so forth like that. And I think the ones that'll deal with the ones who are the most malleable and flexible and don't take it to heart and become more observers of the insanity around them. I mean, there's I see some hope and some changes coming through, but we all kind of knew that, the shit would hit the fan before it got better,
Yeah, totally
So,
agree. Totally agree. And I think you're right, Kathy. It's the inner journey that is the most powerful we can do while being in the world, but not of it, as they say. And it's
yeah.
stepping through with grace and with trust and with hope and being the love. That's what we can do to the best of our ability, I feel, as being the greatest gift we can be and bring through this egg beater everything's swirling around of so-called reality, because
But we
everything,
all have our role. We all have our role to play,
we sure do.
And I always said, it doesn't matter if your mission is big or small. It all connects and is part of what we're doing, and some maybe just to be the best parent they can be to the next generation who
Yes.
may be dealing with all the fallout of this as well. So, I hope that, when I'm gone, they'll say, oh, well, she brought a little bit of truth to, and I see, how I got roped into, the Maui community investigation.
Yeah.
But I know how to say no. And if it was really too much of a thing, I would have said no. But I feel like somebody's got to step up. And, so you lend your talents where they are. And that goes for all of you, whatever you're doing right now in life, it's you're all still working. You're still working it.
We're still working it all right, girlfriend. We sure are. We've
And
mentioned,
this, go ahead. I was just going to say that Thursday is the night. Well, it's probably different. It's probably in Friday or something. I don't know how it worked, but
we're a
it's the
day
night of
ahead.
it's the Wesak moon. The
Ah,
Wesak moon it's the 23rd here, May 23rd,
yes.
Thursday. I don't know what it would be where you are, but it always happens in May, but different dates depending on the moon's progression. And it's one of the most holy Hindu days. It marks the day of Buddha's birth, his enlightenment, and his death. And it is a time when the veils are very thin between the dimensions. And I always bring it up because my near-death experience actually happened on the night of the Wesak moon in 2003. So, and it changed me. So I just was telling you what we're going to do. A whole bunch of my friends is we're going to someone's house. We're bringing over to the swimming pool, and we're going to do the underwater speakers and infuse the Trinfinity8 technology in there. So they're floating in the water. And then one of my friends who does sound baths with crystal bowls is doing the crystal bowls above the water. So you're getting the frequency and tone as above, so below. And under the full moon at night. And so I was like, okay, well, don't leave your bodies. No near death experiences.
Absolutely wonderful. I love it. And my guests know that I love ceremony. And I will just mention that 2 weeks ago, we had some of our beautiful 5D friends that we'd not met face to face before come to Christchurch, where I am. And on the Saturday, we went up to Castle Hill here in Canterbury, which is one of the strongest vortexes on the planet. It's a portal vortex. And we did ceremony. We did a Divine Mother ceremony, calling in Cosmic Bertha, Divine Mother, Earth Mother, Gaia,
How beautiful.
all the
Wow.
mothers, and obviously the feminine within the masculine, the nurturers and the healers. And we had a whole 4 days of amazing stuff. And I love that people globally are doing ceremony to uplift. It lifts my heart to hear it, Kathy. So that sounds amazing. And thank you
Well,
for
we've
telling
done
us about
ceremonies
it.
up on top of Haleakala too, and after
Woo!
the fires, I have a huge, like waist big, tall crystal, and they came and they consecrated the crystal to the crystal grid here for protection and so forth. So yeah, I came to the right island. There's so many incredible women healers here. I mean, this is ancient Lemuria. And although I remember more Atlantean lifetimes, not Lemurian, it was sort of like they go, yeah, you've got Atlantean energy for sure. They're teaching me some of the softer stuff of it, where, it's sort of like the Atlanteans were very technologically oriented, and the Lemurians were more of the earth and the elements and so forth like that.
And more
Healing
heart-based, I feel too.
based. Yeah.
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 And of course, New Zealand, where we are, is part of Lemuria as well, part of that land. It's fascinating.
No,
So
so we're
I'd
all
like,
coming back. We're all coming back to those
yeah,
lands to
yes,
do our part again
yes,
in raising those energy.
absolutely, Kathy. We mentioned in our last Cosmic Cuppa that you had a near-death experience and brought back downloads of information, and you just touched on that. Would you be able to speak more about that amazing event that happened and more of what you experienced in that state, what you saw, who you met, your surroundings, and some of your experience?
Wow. That's my book. That's a book.
Is that where
Uh,
you say, how long have you got, is it?
yeah, I mean, it's sort of like I kind of have it down to a sound bite now, because I've said it so many times. But uh well, I that was the turning point in my life, and it was the night of the Wesak moon. And I did not know what a Wesak moon was, but my last client of the day, because I was in LA at the time, and I was still practicing. I still had a psychotherapy practice, and I was a Buddhist nun, and she said, tonight is the night of the Wesak moon. And I said, well, what's that? And she told me. And so I remember after going towards my car, looking up at the moon and going, still looks like a full moon to me. It doesn't look any different. And as that thought, after having that thought and going, approached my car, I felt this big whoosh out of my solar plexus area and feeling like I was done with my work here on Earth. I mean, I felt empty, like totally empty, like all my best friends had left and everything inside me or something like that. And I really didn't have contact with guides or anything really back then. And I went home and I'm thinking about what this could mean. And that's when I got sucked into this vortex, into this tunnel, horizontal feet first. And I'm going towards the end of the tunnel. I see light and I realize this must be the tunnel everybody's talked about. And if so, did I just die? What did I die of? I wasn't sick. And but they stopped me before I could go into the light. And I just hovered there and I thought to myself, well, this is boring, because I tried to make myself go into the light to see what it was there. And then all this energy just poured into me, and it spun me back around, sent me back through the tunnel. And I was back in my physical body, and I couldn't move, but I'm hearing voices in my head saying, breathe, Kathy, breathe. And there's nobody else in the room. And so they're saying, relax, relax, relax. And I'm hearing clicks in my head as they're reconnecting the left side of my body. So I didn't find out till years later, because they said, oh, there's scar tissue on the left side of your heart. This was after COVID. I got COVID earlier than everybody else did. And I thought I didn't know what it was, and went to the cardiologist because I was kind of wheezing a little bit. And that's when he said, I can't figure out why you have scar tissue on the left side of your heart. And I didn't say anything because it wasn't anywhere in my records, it didn't happen in a hospital or anything like that. So it was it was the left side, it was totally paralyzed. And obviously, and the guides had said to me when it happened, no, you don't need to see a cardiologist, because that's what I was thinking at the time. But after that, I started getting these downloads. I started, all this stuff, this information was coming through, and that's what led to inventing the Trinfinity8 and Ascension11 software, which was based on not just frequency, but mathematical algorithms, and which I thought was kind of strange. I should have this information because math was my worst subject in school. And, I thought it was a cosmic joke. But they taught me that everything in the universe has a mathematical signature to it. And it was interesting because the employee character in my book, Stax, the main one, he has acquired savant syndrome with synesthesia, and he sees the world in numbers. And, we see it as we see it in our life, but he sees, he might look at me and say, oh, she's an 8, and I see 8s all around her. And that piece of pizza is a 6 or something like that, So, so he's a real math whiz, which helps him open algorithms into this portal to this library of truth. So, so I pulled, once again, I pull from what I know, and I never came across somebody who had synesthesia. I'd read about many of those cases, but sometimes they see the world in colors. They'll see it in musical notes. The brain is a very strangely wired thing at times. And there's an old book by Oliver Sacks. He was a neuropsychiatrist, and he called the book "The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat." He saw people as objects, inanimate objects like hats and things like that. So it was kind of interesting making a character do that. But to mention your thing, how did it change me? Well, I got out of being a therapist and directed into software technology. I mean, that's a pretty major, it had always been my a way of life for me, therapy, but I couldn't do it after that because I was feeling everybody's emotional stuff. And that wasn't working for me. So my life took a whole different path at that point, and for many years. And that was the guidance that came through in the tunnel during that near-death experience did tell me that it was time for me to return to my roots in Egypt and rediscover that. And when I did go there, all these memories started to reawaken of certain temples that I had spent much time in as a priest, or pretty much a priest or a scribe. I was never any royalty or anything like that. So, here I am again doing some of the same old stuff. And I knew things that some of the Egyptologists didn't know. And so I would correct some of the things they were saying. So that led to me leading groups there and, to kind of tell my story. So,
and I heard some of those corrections, Kathy, when I was there with you. And you say, oh, no, that's not what it was used for. It was for this.
No. Oh, yes, I remember when I went to Saqqara, there's this big, it's the 5-step pyramid of Saqqara. There was this big open kind of like not field, but plaza in front of the step pyramid. And there's this little teeny raised platform. And somebody asked, oh, what was that for? And the Egyptologist guide at the time, I think it was Harris. Yeah, it was probably Harris. Said, oh, that's when they had races, and they ran the, kind of like sort of like not Roman chariots, but the horses around that. And I looked at it and I laughed and I said, that's not it. I said, if they dig deep, that is the opening to the temple sacrifice, which then leads on the other side to the temple beautiful. These were all very much Atlantean types of temple that they brought to ancient Egypt. And then many years later, in Saqqara, they did find the openings to that, and they found a whole cache of mummies and everything else underneath it. So kind of changed their whole concept of it. But, oh yeah, they run horses around it. No, So, it was things like that you could see, because I could see right away, oh, these areas over here, these were the sound teaching temples or something. And they never talk about that. They just look that those are buildings, they may have been schools or something, but that they didn't understand that people actually diagnosed what their illnesses were by the sound reverberations coming back, because each chamber was keyed to a different frequency pitch. So, all of that stuff, all that information has been lost, unless, some of us who come back and remember it and
Yes.
kind of correct it.
Yes.
But then again, they're never going to put that in their official records. That's why I do like people to know what the official Egyptian, what they say about things. And then you kind of, in the beginning, I used to kind of take the people to the side and because I didn't want to offend the Egyptologists and go, that's not true. That's not true.
But people want to know the truth, Kathy. Most people, I would say, want to know the truth. Why would you go somewhere so amazing if everything is clamped down to be only of Egyptian heritage?
Yes,
It goes
yes.
way back. And
yes,
as you say,
because they still think it's 4,000 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So good on you.
But go when they found Göbekli Tepe,
Yep.
It kind of challenged them, because that goes back like 11,000 years or more. So they suddenly realized, oh, that is another archaeological site. So maybe Egypt is older. And of course, if they ever heard Edgar Cayce would say, the Great Pyramid is at least 10,500 years, and the Sphinx is like 12,000 or more. So yeah, it goes back much
Absolutely.
further.
The Sphinx was there first, definitely. And I think it had a different head, Kathy, to what it has now.
A different what?
Head.
Oh, the capstone.
No,
yes.
no, on the Sphinx.
Oh, on the Sphinx. Yes, I saw it as being the head of Anubis, the god of the underworld. It was, if you look at that and you say, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, at least during Thoth's time, Thoth was an Arcturian, and they called him the god of wisdom and knowledge and calculations. He was the great mathematician. A lot of times on the Egyptian walls, you'll see him with a ruler in his hand, calculating things for the pharaoh. And he was the great architect of that, but he was Arcturian, and he had a head of an ibis or ibis, however you want to pronounce it. And so, everybody thinks that's mythology. There was really a character named Thoth, or Thoth, as some people call it, if you don't pronounce the H. But yeah, all of that was there. And I saw that there was the Sphinx had the head of a jackal, because the body was of a jackal, not a lion. And, right now, if you look at it, you've got this little nub of a head on it and this big body. And the ancient Egyptians were very precise about calculations. They wouldn't have created anything that was that off aesthetically. And so over time, because the body of the Sphinx was covered with sand, and just the head probably of Anubis was there, people came by, took pot shots at it, knocked, guns and everything through the ages. And I think, well, not guns yet, but I think when it got to a certain time, Cheops, the pharaoh Cheops, who they think built the first pyramid, he was just a renovator, just like we renovate our ancient monuments. He came and said, I'm going to make this nub of a head into something recognizable. So it's actually his head. That's his likeness on it. But you're not going to find that in, and it was red at one time, painted red, and there are tunnels inside, and that go directly to the Great Pyramid. There was an entrance to the Great Pyramid. That's the entrance that was used. So yeah, a lot of that, and most of those tunnels have been closed off because a lot of archaeologists over time have there was so much erosion, they needed to shore it up so it wouldn't totally crumble. What you see now was not what it looked like before they started doing cosmetic surgery on it. And so those tunnels were plugged in purposely to keep it from totally falling apart. So yeah,
It would be
I
fascinating to get down into the Hall of Records and the city underneath, Kathy. You imagine the energies there, the history there, what could be found, the knowledge stored there would be fascinating. And I wonder if anyone today has actually been down that far into those places.
I'm sure there have, because when I was in the Great Pyramid and doing remote viewing, and that's when I saw the water tunnels before I was able to actually go and see them. And I saw what looked like the remains of a city underneath it, which would make sense because if you go to places like Abydos or some other temples, which they call sacred temples, and they call it sacred temples only means it because there's an older temple underneath. And so lots of things got buried in the sand over the years. So there was, it's just like Hawara. I don't think you ever got to Hawara. There's a huge labyrinth underneath it that would fit about 12 football fields. And they found that out just doing ground penetrating radar, that it's there. So a lot of things, the shifting of sands have hidden a lot over time. The whole Sphinx would have been covered, had it not been for them, digging it out. And Ptolemy was able to do that. And he's the one that put the dream stela in there because he said, if I can do this, they'll make me pharaoh. And of course they did. So, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. And so lots of that. Yeah. So and if you live on the Giza Plateau, you have a house that, an old house that's still around there. It's against the law to dig down in your cellar underneath, because somebody did it. I think it was the first year I was there. They dug down like 30 feet and started running into tunnels. And they immediately, somebody blabbed it and they immediately arrested the guy and put him in jail or prison. I don't know if he was ever heard from again, but they don't want people going down there because what could be down there could really challenge the narrative of their history. They still want to think that the Egyptian culture did everything. And when it was really the Atlantean culture working in conjunction with the ancient Egyptians. And it's not to say that the Atlanteans did not get a lot of their knowledge from star people, from other different dimensions and worlds and so forth, because they were very, very consumed with the afterlife and other dimensions, and all these solar boats in their skies above would always, their ceilings would have stars on them and so forth. And they were big with astronomy and astrology. So they knew there was something else, besides what we see here. But,
Of course they did. Of course they did. Besides working with the interdimensional beings from your NDE, are there any other beings that you interact with that are non-human? And do you use dimensional portals to liaise with them?
That's a good question. Sometimes my father comes to visit me. And I think he's also helping me from the other side. And it was kind of interesting because he died a few months after I had my near-death experience. And I had told him about my near-death experience. And he was very nice about it and said, "Oh, I'm glad you're still here, Kathy." But he didn't really believe it until he passed over. And then he remembered what I said and he came back to say, "You were right." And so he pops in every now and then. And I do believe he is, from what I understand, whatever you do here on Earth, you're helping your soul family on the other side. What you do contributes to their learning as well. Each of us has a soul family. Most of those souls interact with us in this lifetime if they come into this lifetime, and they all take different parts and roles in each other's learning process. And but I didn't know at the time that what you're doing is those ones that are still on the other side, it's directly affecting them, their learning and spiritual development as well. So, when you start thinking that, it's not just me, I'm working for a group here and I got to get going on what I'm doing. They'll call me a slacker once I get onto the other side. So, to keep that in mind. And my father came through and he said, "You're teaching," which I didn't totally understand at the time. He said, "Where you're teaching us honor." And he spelled it out, but and he wasn't a very good speller. He spelled it Honour, and so I had to kind of sit with that and what that meant and so forth like that. So so you never know who's passed over, and maybe you're aware of that, because I know some people say, yeah, my spouse died, but I sometimes see a quick apparition of them sitting on the bed, or I hear the voice in my head or something like that. We all have some type of help, whether they be interdimensional light beings or just family members that have passed on. So we're never alone.
We're never alone. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is. To have that connection, and to be more aware of it, and allowing for more of that to come through if one wishes, because you get the benefits, you get the gems, you get the connection, and you'll get the insights and the instinct and the awakenings to prompt you to do more. So
Yeah.
I'd never call you a slacker, Kathy. Not at all.
How good. My greatest thing is, I said, if once I move over to the other side, and I have a life review, did I do okay? Did I do okay?
I think we're all going to
Anyway.
say that. You've
Yes.
mentioned that you have an active, lucid, and often prophetic dream life. Could you speak about some of those, please?
Yeah. Well, I opened my book, Fractals of God, a psychologist, near-death experience and journeys into the mystical, with one of the very first, I'm sure I had it before then, but this one was really profound. It happened many years ago when I was working at CBS News in New York, and I was doing a story on the New York City Ronald McDonald House, which is a home away from home for children who have cancer getting treated at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital, which is a well-known cancer institute in New York. And I started volunteering some time there. Before I knew it, they asked me if I wanted to be assistant manager of the house. So I left the television field to become assistant manager of a house, way less money, but I felt a calling. And there was a little girl, her name was Fernanda. She was like about 7 years old, between seven or eight or something like that. And she came from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And she only spoke Portuguese, and her mother came with her, and she was being treated, and she stayed at the house. It was a beautiful, like, designer house, but every room, was like you had so the kids could stay there, and it was cheaper with their parents and so forth like that. And she wasn't there very long, and the mother was very nice. And then one night I had this dream. I mean, it was so clear. And I'm in this hospital room, and little Fernanda is in a hospital bed wearing emerald green pajamas. And I'm standing at the foot of the bed, and I'm hearing in my head something saying, "You have a message for her." In the dream, sometimes you turn around, you can't see who's talking to you. That's kind of how it felt. And I remember saying, "But I don't speak her language." And it said, "It doesn't matter. You need to go see her." And so, I mean, like I said, it was crystal clear, like I was there. And I woke up the next morning going, "What's that about?" I thought she left. I thought she probably had gotten bad news from the hospital, went home to Brazil, which has sometimes happened. And so I called up this hospital, Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital, and asked if she was on the patient roster. Sure enough, she was. So I go to the hospital thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell her. Is she getting ready to die? Is something, it's like you've got this role, you're acting this role, and you don't know what your lines are. And I was really concerned and nervous that whatever I was being sent to do, I might blow it. And then nobody'd ever asked me to do anything again. And so I go and get a little, toy, a baby, stuffed bear in the shop and the gift shop. And then I go upstairs and there's a big, a sign on the door. She's in reverse isolation, which means that she has no immunity to any cold germs or anything else. So you have to suit up. You have to put, the booties, the hat, the gowns, the mask, the everything on, so your little cold sniffle might not, cause her to die. So I knock on the door and her mother answers and she recognizes me right away and she's surprised to see me. She says, come into the room. And there is Fernanda sleeping in bed wearing the same emerald green pajamas that I saw in my dream. And so the mother, she's talking to me and said, well, we rented a apartment and got the father and sister of the family to come to see if they can get a bone marrow match. And I guess the father was the match for it. And so she said, why did you come today? And I'm thinking like, ooh, what do I tell her? And I without going into details, I said, I had a dream about her and I thought I'd, come see her. And then the phone rang and the mother picked it up right away so Fernanda wouldn't wake up. And she's talking rapidly in Portuguese, which of course I don't understand. And then she starts crying. And I'm thinking, oh no, I mean, do they get bad news? What's the story? And, I'm really getting kind of nervous here. She gets off the phone and she goes, that was my husband. I told him that you had come to visit. And she said he had been praying to God for a sign that Fernanda would get through all of this, the bone marrow transplant, the cancer, everything. And the sign he asked for, since they knew no one in the United States, was an unexpected visitor. No wonder I didn't have to speak the language. I just had to show up.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
And I thought about the cosmic computer that had to put all those variables in to get me to come there. I mean, it could have gotten somebody else, but of course they figured, okay, well, they'll at least recognize this girl. And she did come through the bone marrow transplant fine. She went back to Brazil a year or two later. I found she was still doing fine. I don't know since then, but yes. And I thought that was kind of interesting because my life was taking some changes during that time. And I asked for a sign that I was doing the right thing and I got my sign. So paying it forward, I had to be somebody else's sign.
That's absolutely beautiful, Kathy, isn't it?
So when I get lucid dreams like that, I really do pay attention. Although the one thing I did try to do is I tried to eat something in a lucid dream and you can't do it. I opened the refrigerator and there was a carrot in there and I picked it up thinking, I wonder if one can eat in a lucid dream. The minute I tried to bite down, I woke up. So One thing I did find out is that anything you try to do physical or intense emotional states in a lucid dream will wake you up immediately. So you have to kind of stay neutral about that. I mean, when my mother passed, she came to me in a lucid dream within 24 hours after passing because we'd already made a deal. I said, if you can make contact, please do. And she did. And, and I was trying not to get overly excited in the dream because she looked younger and she was happy. And I kept saying, okay, don't get too happy or this dream will end right here, And unfortunately, it ended very quickly because in real life, the telephone rang from somebody in a different time zone that just found out my mother had died. And the phone woke us all up. So,
but you had that, which is beautiful.
Yes. And the way she came from behind and I felt all this loving energy behind me. And it was like, I turned to like, where's all this love? I mean, it felt so good. And then my mother kind of just swivels around into my line of vision. She looks so much younger and happier. And I started to ask her, oh, what was the transition like? And that's when the phone rang. So I never got. And she didn't stick around. You could see she didn't make visits after that. She went on and whatever, did her life review or whatever, and went on to other realms where my father stuck around more. So so yeah, you never know what who's going to it's
No, exactly.
yeah.
There's been some supposed alien artifacts, Kathy, surface in Mexico in the last
Yeah.
few months. What is your take on these, please? What was your experience when you found artifacts yourself in Mexico?
Well, yeah, I kind of wheedled my way into an expedition. And I was doing a talk at the Pyramid Conference in Chicago. And I met this man who had a booth and a vendor booth. He was selling particular items that were like tensor coils. And he showed me some of his objects down there. And I said, oh, wow, I'd really like to check this place out. So the next time was a couple months later, and I kind of twisted his arm. I want to go. I need to go. And I was the only woman and going down to Mexico. And, you've got to cut through the brush and the cactus, and, to get to this dig place where they were finding these tablets and artifacts and way down in the earth, and they were all scattered, but they would seem to be in a predominant one area. And I had to carry about 35 pounds on my back, my tent, my water, my food, everything. And as you're going through this with cactus brush and everything, you're thinking to yourself, what am I doing? This is insane. So we get up there, and one of the guides, I have to say, as soon as I got into the town, it was the darkest energy. I mean, dark, dark, dark. And the guy who was the head of our group, the leader, who I never met before, we went into his house, and he had so many artifacts, and it felt like there was possession in that house. I mean, there was so many dark entities. My head was in a vice. I know when I'm around dark entities, it feels like somebody's squashing my head, and you get a really bad headache. And I'm not prone to headaches. And but he took this one younger guy along. His name was Caesar. And Caesar would use an artifact to actually douse areas. And so I decided, they went off into 3 little groups in our area, and I decided I was going to stick with Caesar because his energy seemed the best. And this dowsing starts, spinning, and he says, something's down here. And we have to go through a tree roots. And I said, it must be deep down. He goes, no, keep going. He says, it must be. And then it was kind of a slab. So we had to go down. So it's not like they could have just buried it up there a couple weeks earlier, to entice these stupid, artifact searchers or anything. I mean, you had to cut through tree roots to get to this. And they were like, sort of like 5x7 size sandstone slabs that had spaceships markings on them, beings holding spheres from other dimensions, things coming, pictures of spaceships coming out of the sun. And so that night, I had a one-man tent. So I pitched my tent, and I found 2 of these things, and the others, only one other person found one, which was not, I found the best ones. I stuck with Caesar, and so I hiding them in my tent. And all night long, I felt like there was entities walking around my tent. And I was away from the other men. I was the only woman, but I was away from the other guys. So I knew that it wasn't them. And, so I didn't get much sleep that night. Well, to make a long story short, the guy that I finagled into getting me in the tent never found anything. The dark guy that had the house full of only found one thing, and I found 2 things. And he tried to abscond with my stuff before I left and threatened to call the military on me if I didn't give it to him. And I'm barely made it out of there. Like I said, a long story short, with I managed to get one out. And, my guides were with me on that bit. They said immediately, you you need to hide this in the deepest spot. These tablets were never meant to be unearthed. That's why they're scattered all different spots, because you put them all together. They had very strange configurations, like a Jenga puzzle. If you put them all together, it will open a portal. And that there was entities that came here from the planet Cygnus many years ago during one of the Atlantean upheavals when everything was in chaos. And he said, and there's still some of them around, and they're going to come back again at some point. And so I made sure, he said, first of all, you need to, I put it in a deep freezer, and then I disposed of it in a place far in the ocean that no one will ever find. So what I was told was I had the driver's stone, the keystone in the kind of like I call it the Jenga puzzle. And it had a driver in it in a spaceship. And so, I think that's what I was led there, just to get that out of the hands of those dark forces. Because, and so whenever anybody, I mean, I have pictures of hundreds of what these look like, and they're just blow your mind away, the pictures. Too bad I don't have screen share here and my stuff ramped up to show you all this. But, and, people would come. I know the George Norrie show came and asked me if I would, and I'm thinking there's nothing to be gained by this. They weren't interested in the technology. They just wanted the alien artifact stuff. And I said, I don't want people to go down there. It is a dark hole of attachment spirits, and you're going to need to clean yourself when you're done, or get somebody who can, do a clearing, because it's a dark, dark place. And a lot of the depictions on the stones were of their creation myth. They were beings of a hive soul that tried to mate with humans, and it wasn't successful most of the time, because if we're individual souls it doesn't mesh with the hive soul. Kind of like when I was talking about the AI, we can't mesh with AI hive mind stuff, because that is not how we've been designed. And so, I mean, I know I'm making a really long story short, but you get the gist of it, and this was in Jalisco, Mexico, in a place called Huelos. And Jalisco is like the state in Mexico, like you'd say California is the state in the United States. So it was in this small town, and the Mexican government looked the other way about this stuff. They wouldn't say either here nor there what if it was real or not, but they said people for the last 80 years have been finding some of these artifacts, but the tablets were the unusual part.
That is fascinating, Kathy. The beings that these tablets were referring to, what sort of extraterrestrials were they?
Well, they were from the planet Cygnus. That's Cygnus. And I think that planet has 3 moons or so. And there was 3 spheres that they would hold in their hands, so you wouldn't know what it was, but it was, what I did was with my guides and someone else, I called them in, and we looked at behind the scenes, what was behind these entities and what was their purpose. And they did not have the human spirit purpose. There was nothing good about them, and that they're in such low numbers now, it's not a big deal, but it was told that in the future they would return and it would become a big deal. And then, possibly things like Federation guardians or forces like that would have to step in and help, because they don't belong on this planet here. Earth has been designated as a human angelic ground of learning, and for consisting of free choice, free will.
Definitely, totally agree with that. So the artifacts that have been found in Mexico recently, do you think they were real? Do you think they were amalgamated from different bone parts? Or what was your take on those 2 mummies that were found in Mexico recently?
I don't think they were real. They look too paper mache to me.
They did, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yes.
did.
I mean, and there's a lot of disinformation that comes out of Mexico. I mean, obviously, we know of the in South America, like I think it's in Peru or so, the Paracas skulls. Now, those are very real, and they don't do anything to hide them. They're in a museum. They're the elongated skulls. And of course, the Smithsonian has run across many elongated skulls in my country here, but they choose not to put them on display. Just like Catalina Island off of Los Angeles, they have found many red-headed giant skeletons, and over time. And of course, they called in the Smithsonian. You can find some of the old papers that will actually say, but then you don't hear anything else about it again, even though you saw pictures of them digging up, finding these many skeletons.
Well, they were hiding them all, weren't they? They just don't want that history known.
Yeah. They probably have a weird room for all these ancient artifacts, just like the Cairo Museum has that fourth floor that nobody could go to that has alien artifacts and other stuff.
I was just going to say that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Kathy.
Yes. They think we can't handle this stuff, and the majority of the people know that, this planet is not the only planet in the universe that's inhabited. Yeah.
Exactly. So speaking of that, could you talk about your understanding of the origins of humanity? What parts of learning?
I can tell you what I was shown from the very first.
Yes, please.
And it's sort of like, how do I put this in layman's terms? That there was a spark of it's kind of like I saw it as a ball of energy and like source energy, and that the energy, because of the intent of the energy, it wanted to experience things in physical matter. And so it was comprised of many souls that broke apart from the whole source. And they came into physical being, and we're talking about millions of years ago, maybe billions, and many of them got trapped in the illusion of matter, like sort of like the old stories of half man, half beast type thing in their experimentation. And that a number of souls, which I believe then turned later into life into the cosmic priests, the Melchizedek priests, the priesthood, a lot of those of like-minded came down to kind of save their brethren souls from being trapped in the illusion. And so that was my understanding of the very beginnings. It's kind of like the Big Bang Theory, in essence, but maybe that was just what happened in our universe. There are so many other universes and galaxies it could have, so we don't know about that. I'm just talking about ours. The world, everything is so, I was shown that there's 12 dimensions. And each of those dimensions is inside another dimension, like those Russian Matryoshka nesting dolls, a doll within a doll within a doll. They're all in there. So what affects one dimension will ultimately affect another dimension, because we're all inside each other. We're all a fractal of the other dimensions.
So beautifully put, and it's what I believe to be true too. It's like the 13th is a meta dimension that encases the whole. And we're at third level, going into fourth and fifth. So to me, that makes total sense.
Well, they say Atlantean was a fall from the fourth, fifth dimension down into third dimension. There was that fall. It's sort of like the Garden of Eden, a fall from sin, and they erred and sinned with all their experimentation. They were doing genetic experimentation too, hence there was a lot of strange looking creatures that later became like known as gods in Egyptian time that really did exist. So it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. So yeah, but genetic manipulation has been going on. I mean, we're still doing it now. We're trying to, okay, let's make the perfect human, let's no diseases, no this, no that, and we're still playing God.
So it didn't stop with Dolly the sheep, did it?
No, no. And I mean, that's just what we know of. God knows all the stuff that we don't. I mean, we know that we're at least like 75 years behind, what they're all hiding from us, like in, technology, space race, all that kind of stuff, they had computers way before the first Tandy computer and so forth like that, or Commodore or whatever it was. They had the internet in their own versions of it before they decided to seed it out to the Zuckerbergs and so forth, and the Bill Gates with his stuff. Those were all prearranged, they at some time. Yeah. So it's, we all know, just like many years ago, Ben Rich from Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin said, and he's long dead now, but he said to a group of scientists, and somebody happened to catch it, I guess on audio, that, we already have the technology to bring ET home. And, this was many, many, many years ago. So,
and a lot more besides, I would say, absolutely. Antarctic. The Antarctic has a huge history that's largely unknown to the masses. Could you talk about your understandings of what has taken place in Antarctic's past and how what is happening there now is affecting mankind? We in New Zealand have been hugely affected by happenings that have taken place from this landmass, especially Christchurch, where I live, with our earthquakes in 2010 and 2011. But the history goes back centuries. Would you like to talk a little bit on Antarctica, please?
Well, they've had ancient maps of Antarctica before they had airplanes, the Pierce Reese maps that showed a huge landmass there. And we know that having dug down into it, that there was foliage, lush lands. It must have been a lush place to live at one time. The CO2 levels were high, which facilitated plant life and everything else. And it during one of the pole shifts, that's when everything went kind of topsy-turvy. But before that happened, the Atlanteans, it was one of their outposts. Usually a lot of the places where you're going to find pyramids, I mean, there's pyramids in China. They don't like to talk about them there. There's pyramids in Japan that are underneath the water. There's ones in hundreds in Mexico and South America. And we even have kind of like the mound builders here in North America. And so, the bigger ones, pyramids, were Atlantean outposts. So this is where, and a number of them is where they actually seeded some of the lost information. So it's not just in, the Sphinx and so forth like that. There were several places that this was these kind of time capsules. And people forget that at one time, back in the early 1800s, that the casing, the white, was it limestone? Casing was still on the pyramid, and it was filled with inscriptions that would have filled tomes of books, and they took it off and used it in building materials. So we lost all that right there.
Lost.
But Antarctica was, and Antarctica now, I mean, as if you've read anything at all, during Nazi Germany, they were very interested in Madame Blavatsky and all the knowledge of space vehicles and contact with other beings. And so it was a race they knew that something was hidden in Antarctica. And so everybody went down there, willy-nilly to claim land. And of course, they hide everything that's going on down there. But there's bases down there, deep underground bases. There's no doubt about it. And there's alien bases as well. So it's not just human. And so will we ever get to the full story? Actually, I do address that in one of my books. And that's second and third book, the Antarctica and what's going on down there. And when I was doing working with Dr. Stephen Greer in Arizona in the desert remote viewing and alien space contact, I went down into one of the mountaintops in remote viewing, and I met a very tall, like about 8 to 10 feet tall praying mantis. And I'd never seen a praying mantis before. And this praying mantis knew I was there, could read my mind, was very sentient, and pushed me out. And but I saw that the mantis beings were very instrumental in a lot of alien abductions, and they just let the little grays take the rap for it. And they're really biological, kind of like robot creatures. They can, from what I understand, beings on other planets can project their consciousness into these little grays, and they use them on spaceships. This way they can be away for hundreds of years without decaying their physical body back home. So these guys, they don't have any sex. They don't have any, reproductive organs. They don't have any ears. They don't really eat. They're artificial biological, creatures. And but the idea that they could have their consciousness manipulated by someone back in another place, so that you're on a spaceship, you don't need any food, you don't need to deal with waste. You can be out there for hundreds, thousands of whatever years to get from one galaxy to another and so forth like that. And it all started to make sense. That's how we couldn't do that because we can't live that long, we decay.
And we need sustenance. That's the first time I've heard, it's really interesting, someone talking about a higher consciousness being fractally put into a biological robot. That's really, really interesting, Kathy.
So they manipulate it that way. And of course, that they make the little guys do the dirty work, and they're hiding behind these little creatures. Yeah. But oftentimes when I've talked to people who've had abductions, and they may have had, somebody probing them or so in the little gray, a few of them have said they've seen a mantis in the corner. And so, yeah.
Because they're master geneticists too, the mantis.
Yes. I remember Dr. Greer, when I said I ran across one, he said, oh, well, he said they're the teachers. And then later on, he said they're the teachers. And they're the teachers of the little grays. And then later on, asking my own guys, I got the full story that it's not all what people think they are. I mean, there's obviously good ones, but just like there's good humans and bad humans, each race has its factions.
So as a last question for you, my love, how do you see the way forward for humanity, and how can we best navigate through these times on our journey to freedom?
Well, one step at a time, but just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving, and don't let it overwhelm you. So many people are getting, really depressed because they feel powerless. But, there's still parts of your life that you do have power over. And, as I see that when we start to put our collective consciousness together and start working on intent, things start to loosen up a little bit, more truth is coming out now than ever before. And, some of the bad guys are finally getting called on it. And, so it's, I think we've gotten to, there's that song, I don't know who does the song, is "We're not going to take it. We're not going to take it after all." That song, I think that should be our theme song, because the more and more people don't take, they're wise to to, the pandemic and all the other stuff that they put on us, and that they're censoring stuff and everything else. And as more and more awaken, and it's too bad some of them take so long to awaken, but people are just going to say, I'm not. The Hawaiians taught me something. If they don't want to get tags on their plates, they say, screw it, I'm not going to do it. And there's nothing they can do here. They don't want to, they don't want to pay their taxes. Come after me. And nobody does, so, it's sort of like, I personally believe that what we should do in the United States is everybody should take a tax holiday, refuse to pay, their taxes. That would change things very quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely would.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, before we open to questions, what do you offer?
And stay with your own truth.
Thank you.
Don't look outside there for somebody else's truth to tell you what to do. Follow your inner voice. Even if it's not, you're not popular by what you're following. Don't go with the herd. If you need to be, that lone person in the crowd, follow what your own truth is. Yeah. So that's all.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Kathy. Beautiful, wise words. Thank you. So before we open to questions, what do you offer people? I know you've got your beautiful books, and how can people find you or purchase your books?
They're available in every country. If you go to Amazon, and actually all you have to do is put in Kathy J. Forti and you'll find that, or you'll find, even on the internet, you'll find all of my Egyptian blogs, or you'll find my website for my technology is Trinfinity8.com or Ascension11.com. Maybe you'll put it at the bottom in the, at this thing here. And my website for my books is stackslibraryoftruth.com. But if you go to Amazon, all my books are available there, and they're doing very well. And I'm gaining a following quickly. It's like people are saying, I read it all in one day. I couldn't stop.
That's wonderful. Does anyone have a question for Kathy this evening? If you do, please put your hand up.
You look very familiar.
Yes, we saw each other before.
Oh, is that it? Is that it? I was going to say, that guy's face
I'm not a new.
Okay.
So it's really very good to see you again, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have a question. On this AI timeline, 20 years, or towards the end of these 20 years, did you get to see any changes, like the collective attempting to revert or rebel against the AI?
Well, certainly my characters do. Yes, but in real life, people do. People are not going to, they're going to push as hard as they can. And of course, they're going to push through some things, whether you say yes or no, just like those guys on top of Haleakala, the military is going to push their telescopes on us, whether we say yes or no, even though everybody says we do not give our consent. In fact, take all of your telescopes that you got up there now and leave. And they're going to do that. And so, we all have to become warriors, and so not let them get away with it. But I see people pushing back. There's no doubt about it. Maybe that's what causes the civil war in our country. And maybe that will be the same in other countries. I didn't really look at other countries. I just looked at what was happening here, obviously, because I'm in the midst of it. Even though I'm on an island, I'm not on the mainland. We still have our craziness here too. It's sort of like people still going around wearing masks outside, walking by themselves. You just kind of like, what's that about? And people, you notice, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but people are more reactive. They're short-tempered. They fly off the handle more easily, and they're doing crazy stuff. It's that doesn't make sense. And so I think I think we're all being affected by the cosmic rays too, coming through at this time, and I certainly know that in our states that they seed the clouds, chemtrails, and seed the clouds, and that has a lot of aluminum oxide in, and that dulls memory. So people have been talking about, feeling like their brains are scattered and so forth. So actually, Lou, I'm digressing a bit here, but yes, people aren't just going to take it. There'll be some that will just say yes. I mean, there was one part in the book where when they destroy, oh, I don't want to give it all away, but before, but they do something and some people are like, they're no longer hearing voices in their head. They're no longer chipped and they don't know what to do. It's sort of like they've been so used to being told, there's always, the great hive mind that tells them what to do. And some people look like they're obsessed, they're possessed, not obsessed, possessed by the hive mind now. And you just kind of shake your head, and just know that everyone has a different timeline for their spiritual evolution and development. And, there's sometimes I just want to say, you idiot, wake up, and just slap them silly. But, I have to show some compassion because everybody's different. Maybe that's the lesson for the rest of us who may see what they're trying to do. And, it seems so obvious to us that why can't they see it too? But yeah.
Totally, Kathy. And I think we do need compassion. Everyone's on their own timelines of evolution, but it's a hard one. And I think a lot of people have got messed up for various reasons. And it's very hard to see that when people are going crazy and being dumbed down and not actually seeing what's really going on. It's this huge dichotomy of ideas and ideologies and what's right and what's not. But, the truth seekers are fighting. We're fighting for freedoms in whichever way we can do it. In our own
Fear
way.
makes them do a lot of irrational things,
Yeah.
and not get caught up in fear. As you know, that, usually sometimes you fear something and it turns out that fear was overblown, and usually we get through things. They may not be comfortable, but we usually survive things unless we die. But all we don't really die. We only die in this body. We are, who we are doesn't die. That continues to exist. We just keep switching out bodies. It's kind of like the body.
Absolutely, we do. It's like buying a new car.
That's right, exactly.
I think I'll choose a Porsche next time.
We need to have you back in order to sort of discuss the solution.
The solutions?
Yes. So.
I know nothing.
Yes, you know everything. So we are looking forward to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank
Maybe just a
much,
scintilla, but well, yeah, okay. It's sort of like let's see what happens next. That's always I was gonna say what I'm watching it like a movie, and I kind of know I'll be touched by it somehow, but maybe not in the catastrophic way. Maybe some others will. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've died once and it's no big deal. It's really easy. It's just like going to sleep. And and it happens so fast that you kind of like, did I just die? And so it's like death is nothing to fear. So if this is the end, it's sort of like, okay. And as I said last time, that's why I couldn't go towards the light, because if you go towards the light, you'll keep reincarnating here on third dimensional Earth. So don't go towards the
light. Well said, Kathy. So we'll take one more question.
And good evening, Dr. Kathy. Thanks for your presentation. Very interesting. I've been reading a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, The Power of the Awakening. It was written on Maui. He's an amazing author. And two questions. Firstly, how do you see the ascension of New Zealand playing out? And the second part of the question is, do you have a vision of what New Zealand could or would look like in 5 years' time, please?
Oh my gosh. It's hard enough thinking about the United States, which is really screwed up. Um, you know, I think, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, and I'm not saying this because a lot of you are New Zealanders, but I think New Zealand might be a lot more awakened than the United States. And you probably all go, yeah, that's right, that's true. Because I think this evolutionary time is a time that is going to be played out majorly in the United States because it's its karma. Of all the things that it's done to the other countries in the world, it's its karma, and everything is moving, shifting, like it moved from Europe, then it moved to the United States, the focus. Now it's moving to, the Asian countries and so forth like that. So, I have to say, if our current administration, continues on this way, it will be destroyed even more. But as for New Zealand, did you guys push back a lot with the shots in New Zealand?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So you probably, when I first did the Trinfinity8, they told me that Australia and New Zealand were much more enlightened about alternative health and medicine. And this was back in, it would have been somewhere between 2004 and 2009, I was told that. So I haven't really looked into now, but I think since you're a smaller place, you have less factions to deal with, to come up against. And we just have so many here in the United States. It's so divided. It's, I can see the Civil War here, no doubt about, and that it will break up into individual states' rights, maybe it'll come back together at some point in time, but I don't think we're very united now. But I don't really have a good answer for New Zealand. I have a feeling that you're more ahead of us on this evolutionary route, and that's all I can say right now. Yeah, I think we're kind of at the, I guess there's some other countries, smaller countries or whatever in there, but United States, like I said, it has a lot of karma to atone for. I hate to say that. It's a beautiful country. I just don't, care for government factions, what they've done to it. So
no, absolutely. And I think globally, we're all globally fighting for freedom, for truth, for justice, for love, for peace.
Yes, right.
And everyone's doing it that is awakened in their own way. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because collectively we do make a difference.
Yes, we do. We do. I remember when, Christchurch had all those earthquakes, those natural earthquakes, and the rest of the world, we sent our prayers just like, you guys sent prayers to when we had the World Trade Center stuff. We are all on this planet. We're all in it. We're all connected, even though we may be so far, I always say separateness is an illusion. I can have a thought about Jude and she may instantly pick it up, thousands of miles away and suddenly call and say, I was just thinking about you. And I said, yeah, I was just thinking about you too. So, we are connected. It's really quite deja vu.
It's a beautiful thing. Kathy, I want to thank you so much for having a beautiful Cosmic Cuppa with us again this evening. Thank you for your time. I know it's late where you are right now. You just come out with such gems of wisdom and understanding, and I love you for that. And it's so cool to see you again and have a chat. So thank you so much.
She will return at some point in the future.
Yes, I think there could be a third one in the mix as we speak.
All right. As I say, mahalo. And aloha to all of you, and may the blessings be with you. And you carry me, I carry you, and you carry me in your heart. So,
absolutely. God bless you, darling. God bless you. Okay. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Peace on earth. It starts with you. It starts with me. So God bless and good night, everyone.